This is the Digital Shelf Insider podcast of MetricsCart. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Digital Shelf Insider podcast of MetricsCart. I'm your host, Shrestha, and today we have Kiri Masters joining us. She's a retail media industry analyst, and she's been in the industry for quite a long time. A lot of you know her from the time she founded Bobstep Marketing, which is now Acadia, back in 2015. She has a new podcast show called the Retail Media Breakfast Club, which is a cool one, and you must surely check it out. And there's so much more that I would love to mention, but I would love to hear it from you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Shrestha. It's really nice to be here and to connect with you and your audience.
All right. So, like I mentioned, I just gave a very small brief of what you do. Would you like to tell us a little bit more for our audience, all that you've been up to?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I started a marketing agency back in 2015 called Bobsled, and initially we were just focused on Amazon and helping initially much smaller brands get started on Amazon and navigate that ecosystem, and over time this whole industry called retail media just started to spring up, and it wasn't just about Amazon anymore. It was about Walmart and Instacart and other retailers that were developing a marketplace and an ad ecosystem. And so throughout that whole journey, I came to understand the retail media ecosystem and really fall in love with this industry, because the rules are just being written as we go along. There are some precedents. I always enjoy learning from people who have been through the waves of SEO and paid search and other adjacent and related sort of waves of marketing, because history does tend to repeat itself in some ways. But with retail media, it is a totally new paradigm for the retailers themselves, who are now starting to see the potential in establishing a network and using that as a revenue stream. And then for the brands themselves, navigating what is a more complex world, where every retail partner that they sell to on a wholesale basis now wants money from them, or more money from them, shall we say. And the whole space is just getting more interesting with technology. And I'm really, really excited and passionate about the role that AI agents and assistants are going to have in the future of shopping. I think that is just a very exciting and dynamic space. And so today, after exiting Bobsled in 2022, as you mentioned, today, I'm kept very busy by just watching what's going on in the industry and trying to make sense of what's going on and what brands need to be thinking about and what retailers need to be thinking about. And so that's what I'm doing with my new podcast, which you kindly mentioned, Retail Media Breakfast Club. So that is the last 9 years for me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So in this episode, Kiri and I are going to explore how much the retail media space has evolved over a decade, and how has the online shopper behavior changed, and a lot more. So based on that, again, coming back to the fact that you founded your agency back in 2015, how was the online shopping behavior then on Amazon? And Amazon had its limitations with their dashboard, the kind of data they could provide to brand manufacturers. So how did brands work through that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, kind of rewinding and putting myself back in 2015. In almost every case, as an agency, we had to convince brands that they needed to be on Amazon or playing an active role. And this was the case for very small brands who might have their own e-commerce site, or might be starting to sell to retailers, and they needed a little bit of convincing that they should be on Amazon. And in the case of the smaller brands that were just getting their footing, I would hear stories of brands going into meetings with buyers at a Target or a grocery store or something like that. And the buyer from the retailer would be pulling up that brand's product listings on Amazon saying, does this have good ratings? Does it seem to be moving? And they were taking cues from Amazon as to whether they were going to buy those products. And so that was a little bit of a wake up call for some of these like smaller to mid-sized brands that, maybe this, it is actually a reference point to be for shoppers and the wholesale buyers that we want to get in front of at the retailers. And then for the larger brands, which to be honest, like when I first started my agency, I didn't have any brand or credibility, so we weren't speaking with that many big brands. But they were pretty resistant to this whole Amazon situation as well, and saw it as a little bit of a waste of time and as a nuisance. And there wasn't anyone really dedicated within their organizations to managing it. So it's come a long way since then. And then I would say another era that came up later was the Amazon brand as a get rich quick scheme era, which there's all kinds of courses and YouTube channels espousing the idea of launching a brand on Amazon and becoming a millionaire and, sitting on a beach in Thailand, drinking out of a coconut while you're working, selling potato peelers on Amazon. So different iterations and stages throughout, certainly, but today it's certainly a channel that now has its own team at a larger brand. They will have a head of Amazon. That is now a job title that is very common amongst mid-sized brands today, and that certainly was not the case, more than a few years ago.
Right. So this was a decade ago, and then say somewhere between 2017 to just right before the pandemic hit, how was the retail media space then, and how was online shopper behavior back then?
Yeah, things began to shift as Amazon has this flywheel, which we've all beaten over the head about. But essentially, if Amazon can improve selection and the assortment on its website and have competitive pricing, then that's what brings customers through the door. And so the flywheel really started to get going during that era, and more brands saw the benefit of selling on the platform or selling to Amazon. That started to kick off as there were more and more consumers there. And so this was sort of like the dawn of that era, I'd say, and that, the get rich quick era, as much as that was sort of short lived and probably financially painful for a lot of people, and certainly not a very good standalone business model today. That was sort of the big period where people were pursuing that as an entrepreneurial dream, I guess. And we, of course, saw the emergence of the FBA aggregators during that period as well, sort of stoking that fire a little bit. And what it did do is bring more selection into the ecosystem, a bit more competition, a lot of appetite for sponsored product ads and things like that, which helped to sort of stoke Amazon's advertising ecosystem. So it was, certainly that at least for the experience that I had was this sort of golden era, I guess, of brands getting involved with Amazon, really getting into it and starting to see the benefit of being active on that platform.
Right. I like how you mentioned how it was the get rich quick era. So in 2020, that's when the pandemic hit and everything went online. And so I guess the digital shelf strategies of brands also evolved much quickly and at a very faster pace. So how did that go? How did that happen at that point of time?
Yeah, this absolutely, the pandemic was a huge watershed moment for the industry where these e-commerce directors that I had been speaking with and commiserating a little bit, like, oh, no one understands me at this company, no one gets it, that e-commerce is the future and I can't get any budget and I'm always having to fight for resources, and no one we're kind of shoved off onto this little island where the rest of the organization gets all the budget and love and attention, and e-commerce is the ugly stepchild a little bit for a lot of these larger brands, at least. And of course, with COVID, everything kind of shifted online, and e-commerce was the hero. All the budget got shifted over there. And I think it was a moment where a lot of brands realized how efficient retail media could be, and an investment in the digital shelf, and had to go through this crash course of understanding what is the digital shelf, what does get people to buy, how does search behavior differ online versus in stores, how are we funding these discounts and retail media, and is that the best and most effective way. So at the end of the day, it brought a lot of education and reconciliation within bigger brands to understanding retail media and e-commerce and the role that it played. And thankfully it was short lived, but a lot of e-commerce professionals within larger brands finally got to have their moment, if you will, during that time.
Absolutely. So in the later years, we saw that how retail media has expanded very quickly and very fast. So in 2021, there was a lot of price sensitivity among shoppers and there was shrinkflation happening. So how did brands approach product listings at that point of time to, kind of get ahead of the challenges?
Yeah, so immediately, I still remember during COVID, there was a lot of supply chain constraints, right? There was, I don't know if you remember the cargo tanker getting stuck in the Panama Canal, and that was kind of like the iconic moment, right? Of just how everyone realizing how reliant we are on these ships crossing oceans to get stuff from one country to another, and the price per foot of a container just went up. I forget how much, like 3 times or something like that. So these brands were trying to get literally enough inventory to sell and not run out of stock and face the consequences of being out of stock, which is a huge problem, not just in terms of immediate lost sales, but lost opportunity with the search algorithm and how you might be sort of penalized for being out of stock later on by the search algorithm. But we also saw that panic buying behavior where people, consumers were stockpiling toilet paper and things like that. Brands had actually they were trying to rush and stockpile inventory as well. So it was a very strange confluence of trends happening where we couldn't get enough stuff to buy. Brands had ordered too much, so they had depleted their sort of cash on hand as well, trying to get more inventory in. And then finally, as the supply chain issues resolved themselves, we had too much. We had too much stuff. We had to put it all, it had to go on sale and be liquidated. And now, shortly after that, huge problems with inflation and the price of everything is going up. So it's like it is kind of crazy just to think back to that was only 2021 when all of that supply chain constraint was happening. Very, due to a lot of completely different macroeconomic factors, we've had this complete change where consumer feels very cash strapped, very budget conscious, watching pennies, making smaller purchases, trading down to smaller pack sizes, maybe trading down to house brands from retailers. So it has, wow, just when you think of it that way, what a few years it's really been to have gone from like these cash flush consumers with lots of pandemic bonus money, being able to buy TVs and sofas really cheap because there were too many of them, to now sort of having to trade down to smaller pack sizes so that they can make their weekly grocery shop budget last.
So true. Um, so at the brand's point of view, why is it still a struggle to monitor the digital shelf?
Wow. That's a great question. I feel like you might be more more educated on this than I, Shrisha. This might be a chance to move through this back at you. This question. I will just say that this is there's a lot going on within the brands politically around uh, what they spend their time and effort on, and it's almost kind of like a technical debt situation where there's so much remediation to happen. It's really hard to get started, and if we're going to clean up our digital shelf on Amazon, then well, we should do that for these other retailers too, and things kind of get added into the scope. And then so then by the time the project is ready to go, now the scope is much differently to a an initial effort to clean up just one channel. But you tell me, why do you think it is still so challenging now with all of this great technology that we have at hand?
I think it's more of a struggle at the internal team and to coordinate between different teams and, getting everybody on the same page, in the same room, in the same space. So that's the sort of struggle that brands face.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is something I picked from your podcast episode on Amazon Rufus AI. And you mentioned that the search engine optimization is kind of becoming search everywhere optimization on Amazon. So what is the state there?
Oh my gosh, there is so much to dig into here. I would point out that recently a team of Amazon practitioners and researchers found Amazon's Rufus AI patent that it filed with the US PTO, and broke down, like, here are the big factors in the Rufus algorithm, and the fact that basically we're moving from a paradigm where keywords mattered, right? So I'm searching for milk chocolate, and we're moving to a paradigm where the AI is able to understand contextually what our search query means and the different contextual parameters of products as well. So we may not need to say, we could be talking about chocolate and different different descriptors of that, different ways that people have described it, different use cases, like this is chocolate for baking versus a chocolate bar versus drinking chocolate. And also Rufus can discern visual tagging, visual product photos, as well as diagrams and descriptions and things like that. So the whole, it's very interesting to dig into, but at the end of the day, we're moving away from keyword driven search and discovery. And so what that means for brands is it's very important to understand what are the parameters that Rufus is indexing your product and surfacing it. And I think embedded within that is a whole question around, what role do ads play in the future as well, and when will ads be introduced to Rufus, and to what extent is that going to be pay to play? I think if we look at the history of Amazon, like it's going to be they're going to introduce ads in short order and make sure that is part of the model of Rufus. So that sort of seems to be a given for me. But I honestly think that within just 2 years, by 2027, most of the interaction with Amazon's product catalog is going to be through conversational AI versus the keyword search bar.
Wow. So
I really think that's the direction that we're heading.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's going to be more of conversational commerce then.
Exactly. I think as people get used to it, and it really is a softly sort of approach for now, while people get used to, speaking with an AI assistant and maybe undoing some of that keyword search behavior and realizing, hey, I can ask questions. I can be very specific around the parameters of what I'm looking for. So I'm not just searching for milk chocolate, but I'm searching for dairy-free, dairy-free chocolate that comes in a multi-pack that I can, put in my kid's school lunchbox. And so if we're going to search for that in a search query, you can imagine that we'd have milk chocolate products showing up. Some are dairy-free, some are vegan, some are snack-sized, but they're not vegan. But I actually want to have all of these attributes together. It has to be dairy-free. It has to be in a snack size. So this is where these more complex queries are going to be resolved. And beyond that, we're going to move into an environment where these AI shopping assistants and agents are going to remember our personal preferences and our preferences for brands and who's in our household and what type of, if I've purchased that type of chocolate previously and I liked it or I didn't like it. We're sitting on the very edge of the next wave, I think, with AI shopping assistants and agents.
Definitely looks like the intent is going to be clear on both ends then, at the brand's end as well as the shopper's end.
Yeah. And I think it presents an interesting shift for what you do as well with digital shelf and the way that products may have been optimized in certain schemas for different retailers and that product content being syndicated. And so what does this AI indexing mean for you? And how baskets are built as well over time and all of the sort of keyword stuffing that we saw in the past, that's actually deprioritized in the Rufus AI algorithm from what the patent said. So just as these brands are kind of coming to the table and saying, okay, we're going to do something about the digital shelf, it feels like the ground has shifted underneath their feet a little bit and like, oh no, we actually kind of need to rethink the approach that we're taking with this now.
Right. Thank you so much, Kiri, for joining us. It was such a value-packed session. Totally loved it.
Thank you, Shrishta.
We've come to the end of the episode. If you loved what you just listened to, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back next Monday with a really awesome guest. Stay tuned until then.